I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons, my Bibliosprand, Bibliohowlers, and Bibliomancers. Thank you so much for supporting my hobby and passion even more. It means so much to me. Hi everyone, Petrik here. So today's video will be something that I just decided to do suddenly because I kept on thinking about this and I'm still shocked that by today, how this hasn't become a standard. So today's video will be a few things, three things that I wish publishers or authors would do more in their books or in their publication. Last month, I did the video complaining and ranting about the Dandelion Dynasty cover design change. And today I thought I might do something a bit more encouraging or positive, and that is for publishers or authors to keep on doing this in their books, even if, well, there are still not too many in comparison to everything else. So the first one is definitely a detailed summary of the previous books. I'm still shocked that even to this day, this still hasn't become a standard in publishing, especially in fantasy series. So for example, when I'm reading a series, ongoing series, I often read an ongoing series. But not gonna lie, sometimes I wait for a series to be completed before I started reading it not because I hate waiting, it's not because of that, but because when I start reading the sequels, I don't want to lose all the details. I don't want to lose the details and my connection with the character. So I prefer reading them closer to each other. But I, as a reviewer, do get advanced reading copy quite a lot, and I'm truly grateful for that. For publishers, self-published fantasy authors who keep on sending me books, seriously, thank you so much for that. And I don't mind. I don't mind starting a new series, a new ongoing series. I love starting a new series. I love supporting authors with their new series or debut. But I truly wish that detailed summary of the previous books become a standard, especially in fantasy. Good example of this would be the Lycanius trilogy. This is by James Islington. This is the third book in the Lycanius trilogy. And if you open the front page, try not to pause this because this is full of spoilers. So the first thing that you noticed is that this is a detailed summary of the world building, of the history that has been told in the past two books. See, it is told the ancient past. And then after that, we will get the recent past. See, the recent past. And after that, this is the detailed summary of the first book, The Shadow of What Was Lost. And of course, after that, we have, an echo of things to come, which is the second book in the series. So we have a detailed summary of not only the world building, the history, but also the first and the second book of the trilogy. So jumping into the light of all that falls, even if it has been quite a while, although I do encourage you to binge read this trilogy, but yeah, if you don't have the time to actually reread or binge read this trilogy, well, these detailed summaries are super helpful. And at the end of the book, of course, there is a glossary of characters. Detailed glossary of characters and what happened to them in the previous books. Even if they're only brief, but they're incredibly helpful. And I think that really enhanced my reading experience. Even though technically this is a very small thing, but it does helps when we're reading ongoing series, at least in my opinion and my experience. The thing is this, when I started reading a series, let's say start reading the first binding, okay? The first binding is published today, but I read the first binding 4 months ago. Let's say the book will be published a year from now. A year after I read the first binding, that would mean that I've read probably 100 books since I've read the first binding. 100 books. And that's for a sequel that is released a year after the first book. How about when it takes 2 years? That's 200 books. There is absolutely no way I could remember everything or a lot. Sometimes this actually decreased my enjoyment of reading a sequel or the last book of a series, which recently actually happened with me reading Until the Last by Mike Shackle, which I love, by the way, but I cannot deny that I would have loved Until the Last so much more if I did a reread of the previous books, or maybe if there is a summary or a detailed glossary of characters and what happened to them before. But of course, there is none of them, so I forgot a lot of the characters. And maybe you can kind of say that this is not the author's fault, but this is also not the reader's fault if we think that our enjoyment is decreased because we don't have time to reread the previous books. Of course, nothing will beat a reread of the previous books. That will always be the best way to actually refresh your connection with the characters, refresh your memory of the plotline, the world building, and everything else. But sometimes we just don't have the time to reread everything. Like me, I have so many ongoing series. Right now, I'm pretty sure that I have maybe at least 50 or 100 ongoing series I have going on. And that is a lot of series. If I decide to reread every time a sequel comes out, I will just be rereading all my life. Then there is also the risk of rereading all the previous books and then only to find that the last book actually is disappointing. For example, for me, it's like The Lightbringer by Bran Wicks and also The Books of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. For these two series, I actually reread all the previous books only to catch up, and well, it was disappointing. Lately, a lot of self-published fantasy authors have been doing this, and I'm truly thankful. I think this is a right decision, and I wish more publishers, more traditionally published or self-published fantasy authors would actually implement this. There's an argument, and this has been done a lot, that you can do this by, well, making the characters remembering stuff and details from the previous books, which sometimes work. They sometimes work, but they're not enough. As I said, it's been 100 or 200 books since the first book or the previous book came out. There is no way a simple remembrance of the character could be enough. This is actually the biggest reason why I'm making this video right now, because I cannot help but think why this hasn't become a standard yet. I don't think this should be a difficult thing to do. I mean, it's only a few pages long. Like The Light of All That Falls that I just showed you, that's about 20 pages, and that details efficiently and effectively what happened in the previous books before, and they're immensely helpful, especially for a complex fantasy series. And the second thing, and this is not too big of a deal, but it would be kind of helpful for us to actually maintain our expectations when it comes to reading an intimidating book, a big book. So that is to include word count. So page count isn't an accurate determining factor of how long or how big a book is. For example, this is the first binding by R.R. Virdi. This one is 800 pages long, and it is 350,000 words long, which, judging from the page count and also the word count, this is a big book. There is no doubt about that 350,000 words is a big book. But the word count is something that I knew from the author, not from the book. It is not written on the book. And I think it actually helped me maintain my expectation. I knew when to commit to read a big book, because sometimes life gets super busy, life gets super tiring, and I don't have the time or maybe the energy to concentrate on reading a massive book at the moment. Reading mood and reading timing actually matters a lot when it comes to affecting our, well, reading enjoyment a lot. And why do I say that page count is not an accurate representation of how long a book is? So this one, as I said, is 800 pages long, 830 pages long, and 350,000 words. So Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer, this one, it has a similar number of pages, about 800 pages long, but the actual word count is actually less than 200,000 words. So that's a huge difference, even though both of them have a similar number of pages, but the word count, well, they differ by double. Although the first binding and Dragon Mage has a similar number of page count, but this is twice larger than Dragon Mage. So that's why I said that page count is not an accurate representation of how long a book is. But of course, at the end of the day, if a book is good, no matter how long a book is, no matter how big a book is, well, it will flew by. That's from my experience. For example, I read Rhythm of War or anything in the Stormlight Archive. Those books are super massive, but each of them took me about 6 days or a week to read. Sometimes I read a book that's twice smaller than that, but it took me 10 days. It depends on how good a book is. It depends on, well, how easy to read the process, and there's so much factor that counts into how fast a book flew by for me, how immersive it is. And also, including word count would actually make my videos on the biggest fantasy series video, it would make that video much easier to do. So that's another thing that I wish more publishers or more authors would do, or actually include in their website. And speaking of website, they could also include their detailed summaries. If they don't want to include them in their books, then include them on the website, like Gareth Hanrahan. Like Gareth Hanrahan did with the Black Iron Legacy, he includes detailed summaries, detailed world building stuff on his website. Or maybe do it like Christopher Ruocchio. I haven't read Sun Eater yet, but I think Christopher Ruocchio did detailed summaries of the previous books in his series like Empire of Silence, Howling Dark, and Demon in White on his YouTube channel. And I think these kind of things are very helpful to readers who don't have time to reread, and it will actually increase their enjoyment of your sequel. And lastly, another thing that I would like to mention, and this is something that has been complained or has been mentioned quite a lot, and that is the inclusion of floppy paperback. So I'm reading Sons of Darkness right now by Gourav Mouhanty, and this is an amazing book, by the way. I'm almost done with it. I should be done with this tomorrow or the day after, and after that I will post a review for Sons of Darkness. But anyway, as I read through this one in physical format, there is something that makes me kind of remember how good it is, and that is to read from a floppy paperback. And I'm talking about something like this. So you can just lay it down anywhere, and it is lightweight, and it's something that seems minor, but it actually improved my reading experience. And this situation is actually not exclusive to paperbacks. I know that floppy paperbacks is probably the best way to read a book. It's probably the most convenient way to read a book, well, other than Kindle, but you know, we cannot feel the paper on Kindle. This kind of thing actually exists also in hardcover. So for example, again, this is the UK edition of the first binding. Again, sorry, this is such a beautiful looking book, and also my review is featured on the back, so yeah. And that makes me super happy. But anyway, this is the UK edition, and in the UK edition, yeah, see, when you lay it down like this, you can't actually read it. You have to actually use both hands, even if you laid it on the table or on your bed. But you have to use one hand or both hands to actually read a hardcover like this. But the US edition, which I also own, so thank you so much to the publishers for keep on sending me the first binding. So this is the US edition of the first binding, and I think this is a great example to show you what I'm talking about. So the US publication is floppy. See, you only need one hand. You can put it on your table or on your bed, and you can immediately read it. You don't have to keep on holding the pages for you to read the book. And I think this is a very nice thing to do. And I keep on noticing that this happens more often. I mean, floppy paperback or floppy hardcover seems to happen more often with US publishing. And that's one of the benefits of getting a US edition. But the UK edition, like the first binding that I just showed you, and also, well, The Light of All That Falls is another example, because this is the UK hardcover. See, I'm going to show you once again. See? You cannot read this without actually holding it with another hand. And I know that, again, this is just a very small thing, but I think this kind of things actually, well, improve your reading experience. And I wish more publishers, more authors will actually make more floppy hardcovers or floppy paperbacks. I think the US hardcover actually comes with a soon binding. I think that's the name. So with soon binding, that makes the book more floppier, and you can actually lay it down on the table and just read it. So yeah, that's it for today's video, and I know there are still a lot of things that I wish more publishers, more authors would do with their books that is not related to the content of their story, but actually helps in improving readers' reading experience. So what do you think about these three things that I just mentioned? And do let me know the things you wish more publishers or more authors would include in their book to improve your reading experience, even if they're not actually related to the content of the story. So yeah, that's it for me today. As always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your support. Bye-bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much once again to all my patrons who keep on supporting me, and also my new bibliomancer, JC.